Welcome once again to Arctic Fire. This unique gathering of swordsmiths explores the outer edge of the craft, where craftsmanship, artistry, storytelling, history, and myth combine. This year, the group has recreated objects found in the legendary hoard of Grendel, from the most ancient surviving poem in Old English, Beowulf. 4 days of live broadcast, in which legends will be reborn. Arctic Fire 2016, Grendel's Hoard.
My presentation is called Skeldungar, which is presumably, according to my linguist friend, the name of the Shieldings, how they would call themselves in 6th century. You clever viewers might spot a typo in the title, that there is a little typo in last letter, but it's not really. It is there to represent the sound of R that was supposed to be a sound of Skeldungar, as they call themselves. And my subtitle is Material Culture of the Spear Danes. I would like to explore what we have learned from the amazing find Peter was telling us about, and also other finds from similar circles around Caroline, and we will touch on that. So, as Peter, I will call you Peter because I have really hard time to pronounce your name correctly. As Peter was telling us, there was a find of group of daggers in Europe, which are like the most common trait they have is they are oversized, and there is also a find of a giant sword we will be talking about later, and other stuff that's not into the scale of human beings. So what might be the reason for that? We touched on it in a previous presentation, and I would like to do it now. So there's obviously one way how to look at it, and this is the scientific way, and it is to ignore it. We won't speak about it, and it won't pose any danger to our knowledge or wisdom, and everything's super convenient. Other version of how to look at it is to actually believe that there were trolls, giants, dragons and stuff, and this is the stuff you shouldn't admit believing publicly, at least where I live. And there's another way how to look at it, and it's somewhere in the middle. There might have been a religious or magical cult of troll, and those oversized items, swords, daggers, but we also know about finds of jewelry that's much bigger than for humans, might be done as offerings for beings that are much larger than we are, or maybe they may have been placed on in the shrines on the statues of bigger deities. So that might be an explanation for those. There is some other evidence for a troll cult in Europe that Peter didn't mention, and I would briefly go through that. So here are two examples of that possible troll cult. You can see this metal object. This is a stray find from Gotland, and amazingly enough, it really corresponds well with the drawing from Carl Linné's report of the Gotland burial mound, and we suppose from like a comparison that it's a drinking horn mound, very similar but simpler as the one in a Teplo horn from Britain. And there is this motif of hand, which we know from the contemporary art, but on this hand we have we clearly see that the hand has only three digits and a thumb, and we can see the claws. If you can find the picture of the actual taplow horn, you can see that the hand on the taplow horn looks much more human, has 5 fingers, and it's completely normal. There is also a theory written by Gotthard Winter that the weird thing above the shoulder joint is actually a blood, so it's suggesting a ripped off arm, and it will lead us directly to a Beowulf poem. There is another, it's a rune stone from Denmark. This is my redrawing of a very bad drawing of Gerhard from Worms, who was a scholar in 18th century, drawing many rune stones. For example, those from Hunestad in, I think Hunestad in Sweden. So this one is actually lost, or lost. We know where the stone is. It was used in repairing Roskilde Cathedral, but not the picture, not the runes are visible anymore. Another evidence for the troll cult is much better known, and it's I think it's called Shet. I wouldn't be super sure how to pronounce it, or Sket, and it's a very little coin, like 8 millimeters in diameter, and it was minted in Ribe, the oldest town in Denmark. And common knowledge now suggests that it shows Odin and the beast, at least in numismatic circles. We know this coin as a Odin/beast type. But the problem with that is Odin has one eye, and as the Wolfherdenas in their recent paper proved, altering of the eye is quite a rule for depicting Odin, and the theory that this depicts Odin before losing the eye is pretty far-fetched. So Gotthard Winter suggested that this might actually represent a troll, and by conclusion it might be a Grendel. The reverse of the coin shows a 4-legged creature, and there he wasn't really sure what does that depict. It might be a stag. That's a royal animal of a Danish dynasty, or it might be a dragon, but that would also connect the coin with the Beowulf poem. So that might be like a memorial coin of the deeds of Beowulf, killing the troll and killing the dragon. So we will never know if it's stag or dragon. I want to be clear that I don't support the theory. It's a Beowulf themed coin, but I think it's worth mentioning it in the context of what we are doing. And when we talked about first what we are doing with the Grendel's hoard, we talked about approaching it from various angles to define Grendel by the objects we are making. And either because I'm super intelligent or very intellectually lazy, I chose to step aside and look at the problem from the perspective what Grendel is not. Because if you are making a bronze casting, the casting will be defined by the mold, and the mold represents what the casting is not. So we should examine what was the mead hall culture from which he was exempted, outlawed, and forbidden from. So when we speak about mead hall culture, what we mean? We mean a culture that's dominated by war bands or armed retinues or of kings or chieftains, and but not in a sense of later feudalism. So the loyalty of your peers and of your warband mates was not achieved by giving a land or office, but was achieved by gifts and by social cooperation in mead hall, by celebrating, by drinking rituals, and by boasting, oath swearing, and stuff like that. So ancient Germanic peoples really believed they lived in a world that was really cruel and hostile, and the mead hall defined the safe space where they felt safe and joyful, and the ruler, the leader, was a provider of that safe space. We can read in the Beowulf in the beginning that the most glorious deed of Hrothgar was building that great mead hall, even if we read in the poem that the mead hall was destined to be burned in an armed conflict later with Swedes. Yeah, don't look at Peter, please. So, as I was saying before in a group presentation, I wanted to concentrate on collective aspect of the hoard, and as we all know, spears are not so well studied material, because metallurgists are not so interested in them, because by experience they know they are not that interesting as swords or saxes. But I found a parallel in a Gotlandic sax, and we may think that it's a cheap representation of pattern welding, but it may also be a motif of wolf or troll's teeth on a blade. It's quite interesting that in the same areas where the daggers with the teeth on them were found, as Peter was talking about, it somehow correlates with the areas with the weapons decorated with teeth, either pattern welded teeth or inlaid or stamped designs. So those are the motifs I used in a spear blade, and this is a motivic parallel for carved shaft. This is again being pretty old. I think it's Nidam find also in Denmark, 4th century, but the tradition may or was alive in the time of Beowulf, as we saw from the fine drawing. I was also compelled to make reconstructions of other items from the hoard, and the next in order is pair of bracteates. Bracteates were very thin sheet metal medallions or pendants that were made in the 5th and 6th century, and the motivic vocabulary of those is very much Germanized Roman medals and coins. This one is pretty unique in depicting a stag instead of horse. Most of them, if there is a animal, horns, and there is also a runic inscription on both of them. If you can look on the above the hair of the man, there is a runic inscription, only 3 letters, and it reads Alu. And what that means will be revealed later. This is a Ulrich Fries picture of those bracteates. I'm not sure if those were acquired by Gotthard, but he didn't pay too much attention to them because they looked quite normal and in line with other finds from contemporary Europe. Here's a little picture of tools I have to make make them, and also when I was reconstructing the horn mount, I had to make a die for that one too. One of my practical demonstration would be showing how to do that. And just now I would like to show you that the first one is a matrix and the second one is a matrix, which means that this one produces a negative and this one produces a positive image of the die. So I will explain it more in a practical demonstration. These are three other contemporary bracteates or solid gold. They are just gold, but not solid because the sheet metal is 0.3 millimeters thick. So call that solid is quite exaggeration, but yeah, just gold. The first one is from Skridstrup, Denmark, and it shows stag, wolf, and a bird. The one in the center is Turku, Sweden, and the third one is it's probably the most famous one, from Vadstena, Sweden, and it has a very quite thick golden filigree ridge around. It was quite normal to put such a ridge around because when the bracteates are gold and very thin, it will be very easy to damage them. So this is a way how to reinforce them. I suppose that they were used as either as an offering, but they may have been used as a badge of being part of the warband or being part of the tribe. And if you look back at the first one, it bears two short runic images, runic inscriptions. One on the back of the stag says laukar, and it means leek, the vegetable leek, the kind of onion. We don't really know what it means, but we know that from the later poetry, Viking poetry, one of the kennings or metaphors for a sword is the leak of the wounds. So there is a connection between leek and the warfare. And much more interesting for me is the other inscription, again, alu. What I found really fascinating that they managed to do laukar in positive, but they mirrored the alu. So it looks, it may have been on purpose. So let's touch the alu, magic of ale. The sequence alu is found in numerous elder Futhark runic inscriptions of Germanic Iron Age Scandinavia and more rarely in early Anglo-Saxon England. Although the literal meaning of the word alu is generally accepted to be ale, intoxicating beverage, researchers found it necessary to look deeper into the significance of the term. Theories have been suggested that the unique term eluserven, possibly pouring away of alu, used to describe grief or terror in the epic poem Beowulf, recorded around 9th to 11th century. We don't know if the comparison of grief and terror compared to pouring away of alu is an ironic thing, or does it signify real ritual, sacred meaning of ale, or if it represents libation to the terrible demons or gods. But it's interesting that we have this word recording directly in Beowulf. It's described in the beginning of the poem when the Danes are terrified of the attack of the troll as they were losing their ale. So that was quite horrible. I think the last item that comes directly from the hoard is the comb I made, and as Peter told us before, this one was actually the one Ulrich Fries kept for himself and never sold it to Gotthard. But I also think that it might have been because Gotthard was not interested in that. He was more interested in militaria than stuff like combs. I speculate about the reason why the priest wanted to keep the comb is that he might think it's a proof of Christian origins of shieldings, because there are liturgical combs from the period, and the hart or stag is an early medieval time metaphor for Christ. But if he did that, if he assumed it's a Christian comb, he would have to ignore the other side of the comb, which bears a runic inscription. And the runic inscription transcribed here into the Latin letters says Lehrilar Skeldungar, which was from the drawing interpreted by Gotthard as being two-part word. First, the second one being Skeldungar, clearly being Skeldungar, the ethnonym of the Speardanes, or rather their ruling house, shieldings. The first part of the word was more difficult to decode, and he came with the hypothesis that it might be Rehliras or Rehlirar, which may mean either arrow, like that it would be a comb of the ruler of the Speardanes, or it may tie to the Germanic tribe Heruli, who were famous for their rune lore and being wizards with runes. So we don't know, and it might be what's in numismatics, it's called corruptella. We will never know what the meaning is. It might be just a nonsensical phrase, but who knows? The Skeldungar part looks quite interesting. And this is a last part from what? No, it's not. It's the. I have one more. So this is my interpretation of the Gotland found brooch Peter was telling us about, and also from the report of Carl Linné. I didn't make the hole in the back of the wolf because I was conscious about future cell. I'm sorry. And the last item I made for the hoard is actually not part of the hoard or of the Gotlandic burial mound. It's my representation of remaining influence of the shieldings of the ruling tribe of the Speardanes in the area of Roskilde and Leire. This one is later, like last part of the 6th century. It bears image of the stag, which I associate with Hurot, with the name of the feasting hall of Speardanes. And I made it according to a picture from Danish archaeological, half-professional, half-enthusiastic journal Scania. It was published in 1994. The length of the pin is completely conjectural. I have no idea how it was long in the original, and I also switched the blue glass in the eye for the garnet, just for the aesthetical reasons. So these are the objects I made for the hoard. I made some pictures of them in a natural setting, so I think that they look good in surroundings that are more natural for them, like something that might have been a surrounding of Speardane habitat. And there is a close-up of the wolves on the spear socket, the bracteates showing gold, the comb, brooch, and the close-up of the spearhead. So this is a presentation what I made, and if you have any questions, I would like to answer them.